Maria Tallchief. American ballerina. November 27th, 1949. November 27th, 1949 is a special date in the history of American ballet. That night, the ballet called The Firebird was performed in New York City. When the dancing ended, the audience went wild. They clapped and stomped and shouted. They cheered, "Tallchief, Tallchief, Tallchief." The crowd was cheering for a young dancer from Oklahoma. She had just danced the role of the Firebird. Her name was Maria Tallchief. On that night, in 1949, Maria Tallchief became a star. An American ballerina. Maria Tallchief is one of the most important ballerinas of our time. Her dancing was legendary. Many ballets were created for her. Tallchief still holds a unique place in ballet history. She was the first American ballerina to become internationally famous. Before her, there were no great American ballerinas. Many people believed that Americans could never become great ballet dancers. The history of ballet. Why did people believe that Americans could never become great ballet dancers? The answer lies in ballet's history. Ballet began in France and Italy over 400 years ago. It quickly spread across Europe. It became very popular in Russia. By 1900, ballet had reached America too, but American dancers were not taken seriously. An Osage childhood. Maria Tallchief was born Elizabeth Marie Tallchief on January 24, 1925, in Fairfax, Oklahoma. Her parents, Alexander and Ruth Tallchief, called her Betty Marie. A younger sister, Marjorie, was born 2 years later. The little town of Fairfax was part of the Native American reservation. The reservation was home to the Osage Nation. Betty Marie's father, Alexander Tallchief, was an important member of the Osage tribe. Her mother, Ruth Tallchief, was of Irish and Scottish background. The Tallchief home also included Marjorie and Betty Marie's grandmother, Eliza Tallchief. Grandma Tallchief was a traditional Osage woman. She kept her hair in a braid. She wore an Osage blanket around her shoulders. At that time, the Osage, like many Native Americans, were not treated fairly by the U.S. government. For example, it was against the law for them to perform traditional customs. The Osage were worried. They feared that this would lead to the destruction of their culture. Grandma Tallchief wanted to keep Osage culture alive, so she taught Betty Marie and Marjorie all about their Native American background. She took them to traditional gatherings called powwows. Powwows were held secretly on the reservation. At the powwows, Betty Marie watched Osage elders perform traditional songs and dances. Years later, she remembered the powwows. She wrote, "The rhythm of these songs has stayed with me." Early talent. Betty Marie and her sister liked dancing to music. Both girls were unusually graceful. Ruth Tallchief realized that her young daughters were very talented. She organized dance lessons for Betty Marie and Marjorie. In 1933, the Tallchief family moved to Los Angeles. There, Betty Marie met her first important ballet teacher. Her name was Bronislava Ninjunska. Ninjunska was from St. Petersburg, Russia. She had studied ballet at a famous imperial theater school. She had trained many great dancers. Dancing required endless practice. Ninjunska told Betty Marie, "When you sleep, sleep like a ballerina. Even on the street waiting for us, stand like a ballerina." But Betty Marie did not mind the hard work. She loved studying ballet. She became one of Ninjunska's best students. When Betty Marie turned 17, she decided to become a professional dancer. She tried out for different ballet companies. She was accepted by the Ballet Russe de Monte Carlo. The Ballet Russe was a famous ballet company. It had many Russian dancers. Now Betty Marie was a member of the Ballet Russe. She traveled with the company. They performed all over the world. Betty Marie danced almost every night. Tallchief, not Tallchieva. Audiences saw Betty Marie's talent. The Ballet Russe saw it too. The company gave her bigger roles to dance. Then the director of the Ballet Russe made a request. He asked Betty Marie to change her last name. He suggested that she change Tallchief to Tallchieva. Tallchieva sounded like a Russian name. The director thought that a dancer could only succeed with a Russian name. But Betty Marie did not want a Russian name. Tallchief came from her Native American background. She was proud of her name, so she decided to call herself Maria Tallchief. Meeting George Blanchine. In the year 1944 was very important for the 19-year-old Maria Tallchief. That was because she met a man named George Blanchine. Together they would create some of the most famous ballets in the 20th century. George Blanchine joined the Ballet Russe. He was hired as a choreographer. Choreographers created new ballets. They also teach them to dancers. In 1944, Blanchine was already considered a genius. His ballets were fresh and different. Audiences had never seen anything like them. Blanchine's ballets were very difficult. His ballets made dancers spin faster, jump higher, and move more gracefully. Many dancers had trouble performing his ballets. But Maria Tallchief loved dancing Blanchine's ballets. She was not afraid of how difficult they were. Learning his ballets gave her insights into her own dancing. Blanchine was inspired by Tallchief's dancing. He created new dances with starring roles, especially for her. In 1947, George Blanchine left the Ballet Russe. He wanted to start his own ballet company in New York City. Maria Tallchief left the Ballet Russe too. She joined Blanchine's new company, the Firebird. The new ballet company struggled. They had trouble finding an audience. To survive, they needed a big success. That success finally came on November 27, 1949. That night, Maria Tallchief danced the Firebird for the first time. The Firebird is about a magical bird. The Firebird rescues a prince from a terrible monster. It was the most difficult role Tallchief had ever danced. She had just 1 week to practice. She worked harder than ever before. Tallchief's hard work paid off. Her dancing amazed the audience. Her performance was fierce and dazzling. She moved with lightning speed. Princess Waxahachie. The Firebird made Maria Tallchief famous around the world. She proved that Americans could be great ballet dancers. In 1953, Tallchief received one of the biggest awards of her life. The Osage tribe and the state of Oklahoma honored her. They called June 29th Maria Tallchief Day. A celebration was held in her hometown of Oklahoma. People held up signs that said, "Welcome home, Maria." Most importantly, the Osage tribe gave Maria Tallchief a special name, Princess Waxahachie. This means Princess Two Standards. The name had special meaning because Tallchief lived in two worlds. She was both a famous ballerina and an important member of the Osage tribe. Over the next 12 years, Tallchief starred in many ballets. George Blanchine created more than 30 roles especially for her. Her wonderful dancing attracted praise wherever she went. After a long and successful career, Maria Tallchief retired in 1965. She shared her love of dance by teaching ballet. She and her sister Marjorie, who also became a dancer, formed their own ballet company. In 1996, Maria Tallchief was named to the National Women's Hall of Fame. A pioneer in American dance. Maria Tallchief will always be remembered as a pioneer of American dance. She was the first American ballerina to become world famous. As Princess Waxahachie, she was both an important Osage woman and a great ballerina. Her historic performance as a Firebird has never been forgotten. She opened the door for future generations of American dancers.